This meeting is being recorded.
Cool. So greeting to everyone. I'm so happy to see you all. That is such a pleasure. That happens once a month. And we're having today as our speaker and presenter and just simply nice person, Leah. So my few words before Leah starts her presentation. I remember that many years ago, my young fellow artist, Larissa Molina, introduced me to the Bostonian art folklore by explaining me the famous saying running through the art community about big, red, and shiny. What is big, red, and shiny? And I was thinking, oh goodness, how wise it is and how practical. So when I started my wanders online in the internet, who could guess that I bumped into the online magazine under the title Big, Red, and Shiny. And right away, I was grabbed by my attention was just taken by one publication there. The Observer observed the whole lot, the whole cluster of arts and cultural events happening in Boston area. And guess what? Her name was Leah Triplett. What was especially amazing that the writer had it presented with the substance and respect of knowing, and at the same time with the clarity and ease, very friendly to the reader, to me in that case. And of course, it was obvious that the person who could create such a material had to possess that rare quality of combination of being professional in both showing art and writing about art. So you can imagine that was very pleasantly surprised when I came to learn, already moved to the Midway Artist Studios to Fort Point, that Leah joined the board of FPAC as a person who navigates art showings in our community. Now she's our midwayer, and now she is at our 89 virtual art salon. And having in mind how many really good things and good deeds have done by Leah as art curator, art organizer, founder of many very interesting related to art and culture entities as a teacher and as a writer. And now we can expect that Leah will give us a cool talk about Leah. That's it.
Thank you so much, Olga. That is so
Just
kind.
Go for it.
That's like the best introduction ever. I want to well, I guess I am recording it. But I'll listen to that later. Thank you so much. It's so generous. And
all true.
Hi, Lon. It's really nice to be here with you all. Thank you all for coming and taking time out of your lives and studios, and I really appreciate it. You will have to excuse me if I'm a little out of sorts. I do have like a really bad headache and it is a little late for me, but I'm really excited to be here. So let's see. I think I was going to start off by saying, first of all, that I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your studios, partly because I'm not a maker. I really, all my life, I've loved art. I made art pretty much all through, pre-elementary school, elementary school, middle school, high school. And by the time I got to high school, I really realized I have little to no technical skill with art, despite all of the lessons and practice over the years. But I loved being in the studio with artists. I love talking about art. I love looking at art. Pretty much want to spend all my time with art, but don't have any kind of ability to make it So I really quickly switched gears into art history and have never looked back once I found the contemporary vein. And I really do love being in the studio with people. I love working with living artists. I work, as Olga said, I really kind of found my sweet spot writing about art, but also really have loved working with living artists, shepherding their work into the world. So right now I've worked independently as a curator. I work as a writer, freelance. I do some editing. I really love publications that build communities. So now that Big Red and Shiny has kind of gone away, working on Boston Art Review has been really special. The new issue is out just now, by the way, if you want to pick that up. And I also work as a full-time as a curator at Now and There, which is a nonprofit for temporary and site-specific public artwork, which is why it's called Now and There. So I'm really privileged to be able to do all those things, and I'm really privileged to be able to do it here at Midway in our community. So yeah, it's great to be in conversation with you all. I think I'm going to talk for like 30 minutes or something. And then maybe we'll talk. I'd love to also have questions and hear what you guys think for 20 or 30-ish minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Okay. All right, everyone can see this? It's blank. So now you can see this, but don't worry, I'll get to that. So yeah, I was thinking about how to start this off and thinking about kind of like why I do the things that I do. And it might sound a little pretentious, but I always come back to this idea of wanting to make things together, make things with artists, make things with people that look at artwork. And this idea of making meaning with people is really, really exciting to me, especially when thinking about commissioning new artworks for public spaces like I do with Now and There. Being able to make memories with people, create new stories, create new spaces. That's really kind of what drives me and gets me out of bed in the morning. And that kind of came into focus for me when I found this quote, which is from a book called Productive Failure, Writing Queer Transnational South Asian Art Histories. It's a book that I picked. It came out a couple years ago. I picked it up, I think a year or two ago. It's pandemic times, but in the introduction, he talks about kind of this new kind of way of critical thinking that he's working with. And this is this was a light bulb moment for me because you can read it, but he really, he says that critics and art historians should implicitly configure the artwork as a subject, which materializes as a subject in making with and through their personal investments, insight, and engagement, rather than an object to be explained. Which is maybe more of a complicated way of saying that, you know, maybe art should be something that is, contextualized by being with it, by living with it, by creating alongside of the artist instead of kind of explaining it. I think it was a light bulb moment for me because in art history, both as an undergraduate and graduate student, you're kind of taught how to always explain things, you know, always how to kind of theorize things, put things in a larger context, but at a distance. You really think about the object instead of the person who made it or is looking at it. And this kind of clarified for me that it doesn't have to be that way. Like the people behind the artwork, either as a viewer or as a maker, are really pivotal to the understanding of it. So that's been really freeing for my kind of critical writing life. I really love to take a biographical or a social approach in my writing. So this kind of, I feel like has finally given me permission to really do that. So I recommend that book if anyone wants to check it out. So I mentioned I came to Boston. I've been to Boston for like 10 years now, which is a long time. But I came here by way of New York. I did a grad program in New York. And when I first got to Boston, I really, because I hadn't gone to school here, I really struggled to find where the artists were. I didn't know about Fort Point yet, but I really like went down to the South End to some openings on like in the first couple months I was here. I went to like a First Fridays, and I was like, gosh, where are all like the living artists? Where are like, you know, people's studios? What is happening? And it took me a little while to get into that. But as part of that getting into it, I started to think about artists who had been in Boston, that I knew had been in Boston the last, 20, 30, 40 years. And that was really kind of, people like Pat Hearn, who went to the museum school in the late 70s, early 80s, with people like Gail Thacker, who took this photograph on Thayer Street in 1981. People like Mark Mauricio, who also went to the museum school. I knew them as Boston people, but they were kind of talked about as New York people when they were talked about at all. Pat Hearn, for those of you who might not know, she's been talked about a lot more recently. There was a really great exhibition of her based on her archive at Bard a couple summers ago. But she had the Pat Hearn Gallery in New York in the 80s and really kind of pioneered the East Village scene, downtown scene, really established the careers of a lot of important people in that era. And she had her first gallery in Boston. So I really got excited to explore this history. And through that, got to know some of these artists. Again, like Gail, who's still in New York. She manages the Jean Frankel Theater on Bond Street in New York. She had gone to the museum school, had kind of fallen out of I mean, some of you might know her. She kind of, fell out of the historicization that was happening with that group. And, did some oral history work with her, kind of got her story. And that became an article that I wrote for Bigger and Shiny on the so-called Boston School, which was kind of what this group of people were called. And that eventually became, that article became the exhibition called Under Dismal Boston Skyline at Boston University in the Stone Gallery back in 2018. Shout out to Kristen, who did the graphic design work for this exhibition. It was amazing. And this exhibition, which I co-curated with Evan Smith and Lynn Cooney at the Stone, was looking at this group of artists and from the late 70s, 80s, 90s, into today, which I always sound like I'm a radio station when I say that, but looking at this group of artists that were using photography, video, performance to think about identity, use portraiture in a really novel, new way, and to create community. And they really purposefully were not institutional. They weren't necessarily looking or showing at places like the ICA or the MFA or larger institutions. They were really kind of outside and around and weaving through these institutions. And Under Dismal Boston Skyline was a title taken from a Mark Mauricio photograph of the Boston skyline from, I believe, 1981. And actually the vantage point is from around here, looking at downtown from the Fort Point area. And this is the first exhibition, I'd done smaller, group shows or, smaller things. This was the first show that I worked on that was really took, I think, 4 years total from start to finish to see this come to life. Really researched, kind of really, it was like the first time it was like a really argued exhibition, I guess. There was like definitely a thesis that was supported in this exhibition, which is so exhilarating. I'm sorry, I'm spending a lot of time on this slide, but the first time I really felt like people were like in the writing with me, or like the article that I wrote like kind of came to life. So that was really exciting, kind of definitely pushed me more into the curatorial vein of things. So really quickly, this work on the left here is Ned Talking, which is one of my favorite artworks ever. It's by the artist Swara Welitoff. She's based in Cambridge. Some of you guys might know her. And this was from 2001. It's a very slowed down version of a friend of hers talking outside of a bowling alley, I believe, in Alston. This is a collection of portraits, sketched portraits by the artist Steve Locke. These are all taken from different cafes and bars in and around Boston. I think the years on this were like 1995 to 2005. So it has a nice span of time. This was self-portrait. You can't really see it. Self-portrait as Cupid by Mark Mauriceau. This was one of his really embellished prints. And then this is a work by Sidney Klein. This is a portrait of the Mike and Doug Starn while they were at the museum school. Sidney Klein is now a filmmaker, working on her films right now, but two of them are on Netflix. And this is a work that she did while she was at the museum school with them. And then this is Mike and Doug Starn's portrait of Mark Mauriceau. That was, we're lucky that we got to exhibit this work. It was in scary condition. I don't know how this recording is being shared, but everything was fine. Everything is fine with it. But it's from 1988. It's quite an older work, and then it's all kind of patchwork together with Scotch tape. Yeah, so that was under Dismal Boston Skyline. And while I was, I'll back up a little bit. I got into Boston and wanted to get involved, as I was saying, with what's happening around here. I got involved with Big Red and Shiny, which was an online magazine that ran from 2004 to 2010 and then 2012 to 2018. I grew up mostly in Virginia, very near Richmond, Virginia. And around 2014, 15, 16, the takedown movement was happening down there in Richmond to remove the monuments along Monument Ave in Richmond. And that was kind of building steam across the country, in California, places on the West Coast. There was movements to take down Columbus statues. Across the South, there was movements to take down the Confederate monuments there. And I kind of started looking around and was like, who was talking about public art and monuments in Boston? And I found this woman, Kate Gilbert, who became my boss. She had just founded Now and There. And through Big Red and Shiny, I had this platform, this website that we could do something with, and we could do we could bring kind of a little bit more attention to monuments in Boston. We decided to hold a panel. It was called Beyond the Bust, Public Monuments in Boston. We talked about works like this, which was kind of pivotal for me to be interested in monuments. This is, I'm sure most of you all have seen this, but this is Meredith Bergman's Boston Women's Memorial from 2003, which is on the ComAv Mall. And this was really exciting to talk about and think about as, a piece of experiential public artwork. It's still such a traditional monument. It's, figures, it's bronze, it's, I guess that's what makes it pretty traditional. There's a pedestal, but all of the figures are off the pedestal and actually in space. So we put together this panel. We talked about monuments like this and how they kind of create the spaces in our city. And that is what eventually led for me. That's how I really got to know Kate. And then I eventually started working in Now and There. I guess I've been there almost 4 years, so it's been a little while. But like I said, we do temporary and site-specific public artwork. So we don't do monuments, but we are very often called on to talk about monuments in some way because they are really our most ubiquitous art form in public space. There was one other thing I was going to say about this, but I can't remember what it is right now, and I'm sure I'll remember it later. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some Now and There projects. We curate 4 commission 4 new artworks a year. And we also run an accelerator program specifically for Boston-based artists to acquire all the skills and sensibilities they need to create public artwork in the city of Boston. One of the first projects I worked on kind of start to finish was a work at the Prudential Center by Justin Favela. It's called Provecho. this was a totally new commission of his, what he calls piñata style installations. But this is 24 panels of gossamer fabric, double-sided gossamer fabric that he's created to look like piñata. This tapestry represents all 36 Latin American countries with one food item from each country. So the most recognizable here is kind of the Goya beans here. This is an avocado, papaya, corn is here. It's quite kind of a feat to represent such a large geographic area in one tapestry. He really wanted to speak to Latin American workers in the mall, people who work in the mall, and really wanted to also work with the Puerto Rican community that's quite near the Prudential Center in the South End. Unfortunately, this went up January, I think 21st to 2020. So we were just kind of getting into a program season with this when the pandemic hit, but I'm really glad that we got it up beforehand. This was, yeah, Justin works with piñata specifically because it is a product of colonialism. You know, it was likely imported from China by Marco Polo into the Americas. It's really become important culturally in certain Latin American countries. And then obviously it's been subsumed by American culture as well. You know, they're kind of ubiquitous at children's birthday parties or not children's birthday parties. And I really loved his play with that. He was taking something that's a really heavy subject like colonialism and putting it into something that's really joyful and bright and fun. So this work was intended to be up for, I think, 4 or 5 months and ended up being up for almost a year, thanks to the pandemic. Let's see. This is a project that I was working on that was paused during the pandemic. So I'll talk about this really quickly because this has a monuments tie-in. This is Sari Carrel's Shape of Play. This was 6 standalone sculptures that were inspired by a Bauhaus aesthetic, and also some of the I'm so sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? It was inspired really by playgrounds. And Sari is a mother who spent a lot of time at playgrounds. Obviously, she's also an artist. And she discovered or found out that Walter Gropius had actually brought in kindergarten teachers to teach certain design principles to the Bauhaus, and got really excited about like, what is this connection between playgrounds and play and, you know, modernism. And actually the history of modernism and the history of playgrounds are pretty parallel. Playgrounds start off actually as sand gardens in Germany in like the 1860s, 70s, 80s. They come to the US and other places. Actually, the first playground was in the North End. The first playground in Boston was in the North End as just basically like a sandbox with a chair and some other pieces of furniture in it. And so she was kind of riffing on that with this, and the sandboxes that you see here and some of these, yeah, more kind of modern forms. And the 6 sculptures, there's 6 of them because it's a 6, she also created a 6 channel soundscape that played through each of the sculptures based on recordings that she took at Boston area playgrounds. So she created this really kind of beautiful tapestry of sounds with different, you know, she played playgrounds like instruments. She had percussion instruments and other things that allowed her to, yeah, capture these really interesting sounds that became something really kind of ethereal and whimsical at the same time. And the sculptures were placed in such a way that there was kind of no center, but if you stood approximately in the center, you kind of got the full merging of sound. And this became, I bring this up and I bring up Justin's piece because I really love these kinds of dynamic moments in public art. I think public art is so often, well, that's what I was going to say about the Women's Memorial. You know, it's bronze, it's static, it's statues, it's, you know, it's in a plaza and that's it. And, you know, that has been the history of public art for a long time since it kind of emerged as a field. And that's not really what I'm interested in. What I was going to say about the Women's Memorial in Boston is that there are 4 statues of women, or no, I'm sorry, 5 statues of women in the entire city of Boston, and 3 of them are at the Women's Memorial. 2 of them are at the State House. So you can't always even come up to them. And I think the more that we can take that kind of, take that gesture of coming off of the pedestal, the more kind of impactful our work can be, which is kind of a superficial way of talking maybe, but that's what I got at this hour of the night. This piece really became important because, yes, it had that dynamic quality. It not only was sight, but it was sound. You could actually play in the sand. At the end of it, it was kind of not great, but you could play in the sand here. This became important because it was at Waterfront Park, AKA Christopher Columbus Park. And this was really like all ready to go right before the pandemic. We got our permit for this project, I think March 7th or 8th, 2020, and then we had to hit pause. So the sculptures were done, the sound was pretty much done. It had to be mastered, but like it was pretty much there, and we had to hit pause. And we were able miraculously to come back with this. The city started giving out permits again at the very end of August, and we were able to get this up by September 4th, 2020. Of course, in the interim time, you know, the statue of Christopher Columbus in the park here, which is just out of the view, it's like right here, you know, that had been ceremoniously or symbolically rather beheaded in June 2020. And these kind of forms that have this kind of like plinth-like, yeah, kind of point or hint, they're hinting at a plinth, so to speak. That kind of became more and more resonant. And that was not something that was intended at all. That came up a little bit with this project, and honestly, not as much as I would think that it would. But yeah, lots of learns on this project. You know, one of which is that, I don't know if you can see this nice little water line that's going on in some of the plinths. That was an interesting learn here. The artist, it was super important to her that all of this wood could be recycled at the end of the project, because she cares a lot about sustainability, and actually is an activist around sustainability issues. And you know, unfortunately, temporary public art can be quite wasteful. A lot of these projects, if they're not collected or if they're not traveled somewhere, unfortunately, sometimes they can, you know, they go back to the artist sometimes they're destroyed. And it was really important to her to be able to recycle all the wood. So it was not sealed, which was a little bit, you know, you could make arguments either way, but it did, obviously it's out in the weather. This was out for 8 weeks, and it did start to get this kind of like water line, which she liked. She thought it kind of just added to the story of the piece. Every time I look at these images, that's all I see, but it is what it is. This is also another project that kind of, for me, kind of hits that really multi-dimensional feel, even though this piece was much more, you know, very object driven. This is where we were back at the Peru last, gosh, was it only last year? Yeah, 2021. This is Cicely Caru's Ambrosia. Some of you guys might know Cicely. She's lives up in Cambridge, and has a show up right now at Lyson Keene Gallery. But we worked with her for her first ever sculptural installation. She's a painter and printmaker, and I was always struck by how her paintings were always really wanted to be sculpture. She had talked to me about how she wanted to make her paintings fly. And I really wanted to do that with her. We had this opportunity in the Prudential Center. The Peru has been like great partners for us, very supportive. They really just wanted to use their space kind of as the pandemic was coming into its, like, I guess I'll say a new phase. You know, we didn't have vaccines yet, but things were opening up a little bit more. And they wanted to be able to use the light and kind of the amazing architecture in the Peru somehow. And that's how we kind of that's how I kind of started thinking about flying paintings and Cicely's work. So this piece was, Cicely is also a yoga instructor and really cares about meditation, and this is inspired by a lot of different wellness techniques. This piece, I have this here just talking about our work and commissioning artwork. This piece was originally intended to be somewhere else in the mall, and about, I think it was 2 or 3, maybe, no, I don't think it was a full month. It was very close to the installation. We were notified that there was going to be a construction project happening where this piece was going to go. So this had to be completely, basically redevised on site during installation. And this is actually all metal here. This piece alone, the whole installation, I think was 3 tons total. And this, I think, was a ton. The materials also, like, we just saw this huge, inflation just exploded during the time frame of this project as things were coming back online. These balls here were intended to be like just acrylic pieces, like acrylic cut pieces, and the cost of acrylic got so expensive as everyone was putting up barriers and cash registers and things like that. So we had to pivot to these. This is all window mesh, so window screen that Cicely painted by hand. And yeah, it all had to be kind of remeasured. This was all also intended to be all filled in by the paint, and we didn't have the length that we had. So my point is that stuff always changes in public art. And this was our most recent project. This closed, I guess, November last year. This was in the Boston Common. This is called What Do We Have in Common by Janet Zweig, who's kind of like a pioneer in public art making, actually lived in Boston in the 80s. Some of you guys might know her too. She now teaches public art at Brown. Is based in New York. And this was basically a large cabinet with 200 drawers. There's 200 drawers here. It actually says, what do we have in common across here? Inside the drawers were 200 of these kind of teal blue, she meant them to be like markers or gift boxes, but they were essentially boxes. They had questions on them asking who owns certain common pool resources. The Boston Common is a common pool resource. We all own it together, but we also, don't own it together. The ocean is the same way, the sky, the stars, the rainforest, all these things that belong to everyone and no one, the internet, vaccines, and this became a way to kind of ask, this was conceived before the pandemic, but came out well after. This became a kind of a way to ask questions. This was also activated 8 hours a day by a group of performers that were given a score to basically just get into conversations with people and figure out what they have in common with that person. That didn't really work. The performers ended up just really talking about the project and shared ownership of things more than anything else. Originally, it was intended, just get into conversation with someone and figure out, like, okay, are you guys like fans of the same sports team? Are you from the same place? Like, what is the one thing that you kind of share together? And what we found is that people really actually wanted to talk about shared ownership, which I guess is surprising and not, right? People also really wanted to talk. I mean, some projects that we've had activated just don't get the interaction that's due to them maybe, but this one was different. This one people were really kind of like stopping and spending time with, and really, willing to, spend 20-30 minutes in conversation with a complete stranger, which was exciting. This is right, I think this is right before it opened, actually, because it looks, the grass and everything looks pretty pristine out there. Okay, now the other thing I mentioned that I do it now and there is run an accelerator program based on like a small business accelerator where you get funds to start a business. The idea with our accelerator is that it's an open call. The call for applications. The next round of the accelerator is actually opening next week, June 2nd. I think that's Thursday. But basically, we have 4 artists a year. All of them are typically studio-based artists that want to create public artwork. We take them through a 14 workshop curriculum on how to create public art, both, conceptually, or, thinking about audience ethics, responsibility in public art are all things that we talk about, as well as things like permitting and fabrication and insurance and budgets. So it's a mix of hard and soft skills needed to create public artwork. And during that time, you also start working on a proposal and pitch a project for $25,000 of project funds. So we have 4 projects that are coming out this summer from the last year's cohort. This image, there's Amy McDonald at Midway. I don't know if she's here tonight, but my kind of pet project, the accelerator, is what I call the Accelerator Forum. And that is basically kind of like a symposium to bring all of the conversations and knowledge and skill sharing that happens in the accelerator throughout this 14 workshop thing into 2 days. So I kind of think of it as like the greatest hits of the accelerator. So, the conversations that are kind of the most pivotal, the most significant, we put them into, a symposium. The last time we did this was online. This is virtually. So this is an image from one of these conversations. All the recordings from the Accelerator Forum are actually on our website, nowandthere.org/accelerator. And you can find all those resources, among other resources there, if you're interested in creating public artwork. But like I said, if you're also interested in applying for the call, that opens June 2nd. This is an accelerator project. This is Daniela Rivera's Silver Mesa Karaoke Politics. I was in Grove Hall. This is a long time ago, 2019. She created a table, a platform, a stage out of, I believe it was 34 found domestic kitchen tables. Sober Mesa, Daniela is from Chile. Sober Mesa, as she tells it, is a tradition across Latin America, where you kind of are at dinner table or mealtime tables together for soup to nuts, from the beginning to the end of the meal, and things just kind of accumulate, and things just get added, and a whole experience kind of happens on the table. And the idea here was that we could come together and have experiences on the top of the tables through karaoke, because karaoke is a way to kind of get vulnerable together. So she created this work in her studio, and then she hired Carl here, who is a karaoke guy, to host karaoke sessions on the tables for the duration of the project. She also did things like drawing lessons. Really, anyone could book a time on these tables and do whatever they wanted. It got really hot out there, I'll say, on this hot top, but that's another story. And this was, I really, really loved this project. It really worked when it worked. People loved doing karaoke together. I was really honestly a skeptic because we weren't serving alcohol, and I was like, people don't do karaoke without alcohol, but it really did work. People got up there and sang and danced and performed. It was great. The artwork itself was not the strength of this project. The strength was really the engagement aspect. So these kind of funky 2x4 situation, the reinforcement that was kind of mandated by the city to our engineers that were required for the permit from the city, to reinforce the tables and make them stand upable on, but it kind of detracted from the strength of the object. So that was kind of a learn for me of how do you balance those two things. It's not easy at all. I think that's one of the hardest things any artist can do, is kind of presenting an object or experience, an aesthetic of some kind that is as rigorous as kind of the engaged aspect or the reality aspect of it, like, you know, how do you balance having a beautiful experience with also having to reinforce it with 2x4s, which were quite expensive then. I can't imagine the expense now. But that kind of conversation with Daniela, who was an accelerator artist. So her project was, you know, had $25,000. It was done in, I think she did it in 6 months. Our accelerated experience now is a little bit longer. We used to do it literally accelerated. Still pretty fast, but a little bit longer now. But that kind of evolved into, just a like series of conversations with Daniela, and the opportunity through Voices in Contemporary Art, VOCA, which is a fantastic organization that's been really supportive of Boston-based artists' oral histories. So you should check them out. They commissioned Daniela and I to do an interview together. You can see the interview on the internet if you'd like, on their site. And we were going to just do an interview, you know, on stage in front of an audience. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and VOCA, to their immense credit, did not want to just cancel. They wanted to go forward. And the solution we came up with was doing a taped like studio visit together. So this is Daniela and I in her studio. This is a work that she created inspired by a fire that happened in a really important, historically important, and maybe even a UNESCO site in Chile. I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the town. But it was a really, really important cultural heritage site, and it was at the risk of burning down, or there was a terrible fire there. A huge loss of life, I believe. Oh, maybe people know, they're adding to the chat. Oh, sorry. Anyway, she created this work out of ashes, and was thinking about what is more important here. Asking really, really important questions about what is a cultural heritage of a place. So this is Danielle and I again. This took us a lot of tries to get into like the groove of this. We had this whole demonstration situation set up where we were demonstrating how she makes these growth paintings, which are paintings of grass that she started making after she moved to the States about 15 years ago. So we had this whole, and it's like a really interesting process of pouring paint and then making mark making and then letting it dry and coming back to it. And it kind of didn't work to do it on camera, but we tried. So that was a really amazing experience. And I think like really the experiences that I super love, like I love thinking about how we share what happens in the studio outside with a larger audience. So that's where I'm going to end. I started with a quote that's been really important to me lately. This is a quote that's been important to me for a really long time. I can't remember when or where I found this, but Laura Rauter is someone who I really admire. She's the founder of the North Dakota Museum of Art, which she started, I believe, when she was a student or had just graduated from the University of North Dakota. Maybe some of you guys know her work too, but she started like in the museum, like an attic of the student center or something. And she's really grown that institution into what it is and done some amazing shows that have traveled and been really important in that location. And she wrote this beautiful essay called Musings in Winter, I guess almost 30 years ago now. But she says, I'm interested in art by the old and the young and the never to become famous. Art outside of fashion, art that is regional before it becomes universal, art that is personal before it becomes international. And that's also what I'm interested in. So thank you so much for letting me share. And those are all my slides. Thank you all.
That was so cool. That was so cool, Leah.
Oh, thank you.
Immediately, what comes to one's mind, I'm sure that not only in my mind, why wouldn't you create something of that excitement at Midway?
I don't know. No one's ever asked me.
I'm asking you on behalf of everyone.
What do you want me to do?
what is your favorite topic today? Now,
About what? About in art?
about art, which first personal and then it becomes international. That is a very interesting stance, actually, because it's up to us if it goes this long way from personal to international and back.
You know the artist Grace Lee Lawrence? She does these really weird sculptures. They're fruit and food, different foods, but then they're like have body parts on them.
I believe
Really
that
weird. I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm not gonna be able to describe it that well this late.
I believe that in some images.
Yes. But that's kind of what I mean. Like it's really personal to her. It feels like it feels you know, it's like food that she likes and food that she eats. But it's also, I mean, so yeah, it's literally personal, I guess. But it's also so I don't know, fantastical that like no one else, it's just very, I'm not being very articulate right now. It's so it's such a unique gesture. It's so specific, but that in the same time, it's so recognizable and so kind of like relatable, I guess.
You know what I'm always thinking about it. I'm always talking about it. We have the huge building for our pleasure to do whatever we pleased with that. And my dream, if it can come true, to make the whole building as the installation, and the one installation, the whole entity on one floor smoothly runs into another, and the person who is traveling through the building experiences that as the travel. This is actually my many decades standing idea that I started trying to do like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, in the very beginning when I started working with other artists, and that may be a possibility here.
That would be really, really cool.
If to look at it, I hate the impression out of the box, but probably it is the impression that should be applied here. And with your, as we can see, variety of different interests into many art approaches, maybe you are that curator that we need for that. What does the exhibition committee think about it? Because both of them are here, Kristen and Milan. They are both here, so they can support my idea. And
I forgot to mention something really important.
Yeah.
Which is that I love working with collaborators. I really don't like working alone. So I'd have to do it with someone else.
That is always, we are always happy to work together. I can say from my experience, modest experience of curating shows here, there are only a few of them, but people are so beautiful in collaboration, so open, so flexible, so creative, so unexpected.
Yeah, I think I've witnessed that too.
See?
Olga, I'd love to hear more about your vision. I mean, there's so much space on each of the floors that is not activated too, right? So yeah. I think that sounds really interesting.
That would be great to at least to try to do that, because everyone knows that I do hate empty walls. That wall is like killing me every time when I'm passing by. So let's fill them.
Well, I think something we've been talking about, not to take, just to piggyback on what you were saying, Olga, but I think one of the things we've been talking about is like transforming the project space into more usable space since we need it. But activating the hallways, just even in terms of process and more intimate dialogue with the residents. So I'd love to keep talking. Milan, I think, were you going to say something?
No, I agree with Olga that it should be activated and the building should not look like luxury condominiums, you know?
Should look like the endless gallery.
Yes, like a wild place for the crazy artists.
Art
Yes.
is always wild, even if it is pretending to be modest and decent. There is no
Yeah.
such thing as the calm, decent art. Art is always strange, right? Leah.
At least they don't call it
It is.
lobby anymore,
I have
right?
Mm-hmm.
I
oh, sorry.
No, you go
Sorry?
ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment on Leah curated piece in that stupid church of consumerism and capitalism.
That's what we called it. We called it a cathedral of consumerism.
Yes. I I was like, maybe it would be good for you as a curator, or would you suggest consider it to sort of let people know that those acrylic balls were
Mhm.
too expensive because of that idiotism of that capitalism,
Mhm.
where that art is presented. So there should be some kind of a connection between that experience of artists
Mhm.
not having money for those balls,
Mhm.
while being in the context of that completely idiotic capitalist fucking shopping mall.
What
We
do
have
you
to
think?
shop somewhere, Milan. How would we
Sorry?
shop if we don't have place to shop?
Shop, shop
Huh?
and stop.
We have to buy
You can
things
go to
somewhere.
shop and stop. No,
You can
no,
call
no.
it whatever
I
you want.
hate those shopping malls. There should be small shops alongside of the street, you know.
Like it
It's-
was promised in Seaport.
Yes,
That's what they promised. Remember?
Really?
yeah,
Was
but-
it there? Was
but
it there?
don't trust capitalists. They always lie, you know. And
Everyone lies.
the reality is completely different. But it was very, it caught my interest that it was in the middle of that stupid, you know, frame. And there was that economic effect
Mhm.
of that losing money value, you know, for the artist, created by the very same sort of mechanism. So how to create some kind of a message for people walking through that, you know, stupid shopping mall, that it is present there,
Mhm.
instead of just experiencing aesthetic object.
Mhm. Mhm.
Which is not enough for me as the understanding art, you know, like just
Mhm.
aesthetic beauty. It's yawning for me. Okay, fine, a little bit piece of aesthetic art. So
I think that's a conversation to have, like with I mean all art in general, but I think like in the public art realm that like doesn't come up enough. It's incredibly expensive to make public artwork. It's incredibly wasteful.
Yeah.
So and it doesn't get talked about. I mean, like wood right now, insane. I mean, anything right now, materially is just really expensive. The labor.
While the rich pigs have still more and more money. This is what
That I can't
amazes
answer.
me.
That
You
I
know,
can't
like,
answer.
We don't have an
1% of Americans own 90% of all the wealth, and they are still getting more and more. You know?
Let's
And
get
the
back to
artists,
art, because we cannot solve all social problems right away. But we
yeah,
can,
we should.
right?
No, I disagree. Artists are the first one to make a
Let's
revolution.
start from art, Milan. Let's
Yes.
solve the art problem.
No, art should be political. That's my
Go
definition.
for it, Milan. Just do it.
Yeah, I have been doing it, trying a little bit.
Okay.
Anyway, that
you
was my,
serious?
I like that. Immediately I noticed that you said
Yeah.
that it
It's
was
interesting too, because the projects that we've done in the first one was really talking. It was called it was also Boston-based artist Cardone, And it was a tapestry made of repurposed construction netting.
Better put the light a little bit. Oops.
And
sorry.
oh no, it's fine. It yeah, we talked about the Peru being a cathedral of consumption as well. Yeah, and so and then, like that's another thing with public art projects are so expensive. And the Peru Boston Properties that owns the Peru, they've been incredibly supportive to us and really kind of given us like carte blanche for the projects. And like I said, they're really expensive. You know, our projects typically come in at, you know, we give $25,000 a piece for accelerators. Those are much smaller than like Cicely's project that I talked about. I mean, those typically come in.
9 o'clock.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's a fee for a lawyer for an hour sometimes. You know, $25,000. So
Yeah.
this
But I mean,
is
like, yes,
valuable.
our other projects are very expensive. And yeah, like our accelerators they're working right now, they're super struggling because some of them, yeah, the wood, fiberglass, like all these things are just really expensive right now. It's hard.
So when there was that installation in common about sharing, the principle of sharing, did people actually discuss the social system which we should change into sharing one, not like collecting, competing, greedy, selfish one?
Yes, I mean, there was a lot of conversations about that. Here's like huge mistake of that project. That wasn't, none of that was recorded in any way, documented. We don't have any of that.
Oh,
So, I mean, and that was kind of, I think people were more likely to talk because they knew they weren't being recorded, but all of that was completely ephemeral.
mhm. Because it was interesting idea. Also.
Thank you.
I
Can I
like,
mention something?
oh, go ahead.
Just referring of what Milan says, I know that you hate the malls and all that kind of thing, but I'm just
I do.
thinking that, you know, some people, most of the people feels intimidated to go to galleries to see art and everything, and activating unused spaces, like for example, the ones at the mall that, you know, the public actually can just go and see, you know. I don't see it as bad as you know, as it looks, or maybe I think that it helps people also to engage with the art, even if the artist is not there, but can stimulate you know, people's mind. So
So, yeah.
yeah, when I was in Berlin, I was well, very different from here. Here you need permit for, you know, to fly a kite. I don't know, but over there it was like really, and over there was like, you know, art could be in any place. A guy or an artist could just hang on a tree and install something for the day, and you didn't need any permit or anything. It was very interesting to see artists engaging with the public, unless you were selling something that was different, but just as performance, you know, it was, or just put something outside, you know, just make something, and then in the park, it was fun to see. So here is a little bit more complicated.
I've heard that about Germany though, that the permitting is like, they've figured it out somehow.
It's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
complicated.
Unless you actually bring in something huge for a long time, but if you want to do something, you know, a performance or something like that, that doesn't involve, you know, money making or anything. So it's very open, and it's very, I don't know, it's just wonderful. I had a great time living there for a while. So
That's
Yeah.
our number one challenge besides money is the permitting system in Boston. I mean, Boston doesn't have a public art permitting system. So that the project in the Common was actually permitted as a bench.
oh wow.
Yeah. So that's the biggest challenge is like, it always has to go in through some back door and then figuring that out. And
Yeah, knocking on
hopefully I'll-
doors, like especially money. Money is like where you
So I
find
guess
money.
I think, Leah, that will be probably a good thing to talk to the people downstairs on the first floor, like Arts Council or all those people, you know, that do
Yeah, we
the
work with Jim a
policy.
lot. Yeah,
That would actually be very helpful.
yeah,
But
yeah.
also I wanted to say I love the quote that you ended with, and it reminded me of ICA because 10 years, I guess you weren't here when they were in the old location near Prue actually.
Yeah, the
And
fireplace.
I remember, yeah, I remember we were new to Boston and we just stumbled upon the gallery. We didn't know what it is. Went in, really cool, kind of like being back in
Yeah.
New York or in Europe, like really exciting. And then it moved here into a beautiful building. And for me, I love the building. I love going there, but the art for me last interest. Like now it's about it. I wish it was more about discovering people, or like showing people before they become famous, and now it's kind of like already established artists and
Politically correct artists must be. The freedom of speech is expelled from ICA.
I don't know about that.
I
but
founded ICA very elitist.
yes,
I performed there once, but now they would not allow me to perform there.
They don't support, local artists at all.
no, yeah.
They
That's
support
the
their
thing.
own sort of a circle of PC grants, everything must be woke, PC, and that's the money, where money goes.
Expensive. Yeah.
You see, Leah, what a conversation you triggered here. That conversation can just go and go and go and go. And who knows, at the end of it, we may come up with some, not solution, but with some workable thing to actually make.
Yeah, revolution.
Right, Milan, let's go for it. Let's do it.
I have a question.
Yes.
What happened to the public art that was at the Christopher Columbus Park, the playground?
Oh,
Is
It
it somewhere else, hopefully?
I think some of them went somewhere else. Some of them did. Some of them were collected. I don't think all 6 were. Oh man, I forget now. I think some of them were destroyed.
Oh,
But I want to do something with that soundscape because
Yeah. I would have loved to see that because I love that the sound was incorporated. It's
and the thing that you mentioned, that if you stand in the middle of it, all the sound pieces can come together and create some whole sound of everything. That probably is very exciting. Or were
it was
very
super
exciting.
amazing. I love like there was sound and then touch. So yeah, I didn't make it, but
Leah,
But you
you as
make
a
it possible.
curator. Oh, sorry.
Yes, Milan, you're right. You're the curator, so you made it possible.
yeah.
Leah, as a curator, do you know where is that headless sculpture from that Columbus Park, where it ended?
well, the city apparently was damaged beyond repair. The head was found in some bushes in 8 parks, I believe. And this is all, I mean, you can find the public record of this, so I'm not.
I did, because I recorded it. I documented when they were like removing it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think the Knights of Columbus have it now, the local Knights of Columbus. And they wanted to put it in some sort of like storefront window so people could still see it. And then there's been like a lot of, huh?
We could have it somewhere here. That would
You
be
could have somewhere-
great.
The hallways.
I think they were trying to repair the head. I don't know. I stopped kind of following it, but I also know that there has been like discussions about what to do with that empty plinth, but I don't know what will happen with that.
I like the dialogue that went around, and it's like I think most people can see it from different point of views, which I like that, because you can be on both sides of the dialogue. Like do we get rid of all Lenin's sculptures, or do we leave them as a reminder and as a part of history,
Right.
or are we somehow threatened by the old, even we might disagree with it, but
What I disagree with is not the history, but of the whitewashing of the history. And if we could tell the whole history, that would be very different.
Yes.
Yeah, we should comment, next to those sculptures, but not to remove them, because at that moment we are behaving like Taliban in Afghanistan, which blew that huge statue of Buddha. You remember? It's the same when people just blew the head of Columbus in Columbus Park. That's the same stupidity, especially when Columbus was person of color, which most of people don't know.
Really?
I was like, yeah, he was Hispanic. This is also that whole paradox.
Which means that destruction is never productive, right? Only creation and construction and putting things together can bring us some positive result. But if we destruct, spoil,
Well, that's actually what
kill,
Christopher Columbus did in America to the
that's why it is such a
indigenous people.
it is such an interesting topic of conversation, and
Yeah,
without taking any
that will be a one meeting about that only. Yeah, because well, since I was born in South America, so everybody, in the school books, that's what you get. Columbus was, the whole story, but they never said that what actually Columbus did to indigenous people.
yes.
So we didn't learn the right side of the history. And I guess now with the internet and all the information that you can get, people are reacting.
That is true. That is true. You know what I usually do when I face a difficult set of things or eventualities, and I have to interact with my students or with my clients or with fellow artists. The only tool, the only vehicle that can bring us to the clearing, to the open, is art making. Go make art, reflect artistically on the thing which is touching you, bothering you, making you happy, making you unhappy. Sublimation is the tool of art making. Let's do art making. And art making possibly will help us to understand ourselves better rather than other ways around. At least what Leah showed us and what we were talking about today and what we were mentioning out today, pieces of art or cultural events of different kind, I think can prove that. And I would like to come back to the first reaction that I had at Leah's talk. Let's ask Leah to curate a show for the building. For the building. Maybe it will be revolution, I don't know.
Sorry, my computer died. It was probably disconnected by Big Brother because I was politically incorrect.
You are not incorrect. You're always right, Milan. Just don't forget it. You're always right. You always have my support, whatever you say.
Okay,
Not that I
perfect.
always
I love
agree
you.
with that
Yes, I love you.
Hello.
necessarily.
Yeah. I wanted to mention that even that I don't live at Midway anymore, and then I came back to the state, I'm always open to collaborate. Since Leah mentioned that she likes to collaborate, I do like to collaborate as well. So I'm here.
Cool.
Great.
That was so good. And I remember that Leah mentioned that he had a really bad headache. So
Okay.
let's not to torture her anymore.
No, I'll be okay. I did take some migraine stuff right before this, so I actually was starting to feel better.
Yeah,
So
the good stuff, huh? Good
yeah.
stuff.
So thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking, an hour and a half out of your lives.
Oh, that was a pleasure. Let's keep talking. Let's
Yeah.
keep talking.
Of
Yeah.
course. And don't forget, tomorrow, socializing downstairs, crippled cat at 8. Yeah, everybody.
Continue the dialogue.
Continue the dialogue.
All
Yes.
right.
All
Not
right.
dialogue, just conversation. Dialogue is 2, but conversation is many.
That's true.
Let's go for
But-
many.
Let's continue the conversation. So when we will start a revolution?
Yeah, right, about this too.
8 o'clock.
Thank
What?
you, Leah. It was very interesting to
Oh,
hear
good.
about how things are done and how difficult and all that. It's well, actually, can I ask you one more question? How like what comes first? You wanna let's say you wanna collaborate with Liliana, you like her stuff and her art. And so
It's okay.
how would you go about it? Like, do you approach the artist or do you first how does it all happen?
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know how other people do this, but I typically, people that I work with for commissions and now and there, usually that's like, yeah, I'm watching them for like a year, 2 years, 3 years. People that I want to write about or do like other projects with, I usually kind of the same thing. Like I'll do studio visits with them. I like to do like several, it's probably really annoying. But I like to do like several studio visits and really get to know someone before doing anything with them. Feel like it's really, you can't rush building trust with people. And when you try to rush that, sometimes it's really disastrous. So I do, and I really want to it's really important to me to have fun. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I really want to enjoy being in conversation with people and enjoy spending time with them as people. My new mantra is be passionate without being personal, because I tend to be, all of a sudden, everyone I work with is a close personal friend, and that's not super sustainable. So I really do. I try to as I've gotten older, I've really tried to protect personal time and not all of a sudden be hanging out on the weekends with the same people that I'm in meetings with all week. But I've definitely I've had that go on for a long time. Anyway, I'm not really answering your question, but yeah, I definitely, it's nice to be talking to someone for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden the right thing will kind of come along, and it just clicks into place. And yeah, but yeah, the studio visit I think is always the first step. And I really feel also with that, trying to understand someone's working style, are they really collaborative and iterative, or do they really want to present one thing and have it be that one thing? Yeah, figuring out how do people like to talk? Are they overshares, or do they really need to be pulled out of? And I kind of like all that psychology kind of stuff, that kind of angle of it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, it takes a long time. It all takes a long time.
Thank
But
you.
yeah.
Thank
And
you
now and there, there's like all kinds of like criteria and committees and
Yeah.
presentations. It's a lot easier when I can just go out and do it myself.
Right.
It would be nice to be independently wealthy and
Wouldn't it?
be like
No, 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 no,
be
no,
like
no.
Medici, that you could just sponsor the collaboration yourself rather than having to answer to all kinds of people, and yeah. I
Yeah,
think
if I was like super independently wealthy and if I didn't have to work, that's what I would do. But
No, no,
See,
it would be horrible.
Milan,
They
rich
would
people are important for this kind of thing.
rich pigs don't know about the real life because they are independent from real survival experiences. So they are mostly completely out of the concept of real context of life. So no, 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 no. It's horrible to be a rich artist. And you can see it immediately from their products. It's mostly about nothing or about them.
actually
Them.
you can see it.
Me.
You can see that in the work, whether the person is rich or not. Like when it comes to art, when it comes visual art, music, anything really, you immediately, if you have that sensibility, you immediately know why was why was it done, why was it made. Like it doesn't sound, it doesn't it doesn't feel true if it was done for I'm not going to call any names, but you look at a painting, it's like, really? And people are paying like hundreds of thousands or more for this, and it's I don't care.
You
But
said dots?
did I say cats?
No, you said no. Did you say dots?
No, it's just, I think that you just always know if people are doing something only for profit. You immediately, like, you look at a painting and it's like, yeah, I can see you're playing me. Uh, it's very, in music is the same, in movies, in everything.
Yeah.
Of course. It has nothing. You can immediately feel
Yeah.
it. That it's
Yeah.
fake. It's fake.
Yeah.
It's only entertainment or just aesthetic, some kind of object. It doesn't have any, inner qualities,
Yeah. No matter how well crafted it is, like you can be,
Oh.
you can have the know-how, but if the soul, if the heart is not in it, you know.
I think we should ask rich people to move to the different planet. Then they can have their own selfish style of life. They can forever observe themselves and their suffering, and they can have millions of psychologists there who would be like sort of listening to their stupid problems.
That's an interesting idea. They actually do it. They build their rockets, they build their space.
Oh, they're working on it.
So they are working on it.
Yeah, I know.
To fulfill
That's called gentrified neighborhood, like our now. When I see those restaurants there and those type of people, I can't just believe, I'm asking them, who are these artificial sort of plastic people?
plastic
They
people.
are all laughing and do you want this? Do you want that? And they are like,
Yeah.
for me, they are like walking death.
Sometimes my Israeli friends, they are asking they are curious about seeing the Americans smile. They are saying, why are you all smiling? You are not always that happy. What is this American smile? Israelis do not understand it, though they're very friendly and open to any contact. So that is American enigma, right?
Why do you think I am answering horrible when I am asked, how are you?
You are not the only one.
Break,
doing
that
the same.
stupid, common, fake, pretentious, sort of,
All right.
small talk.
It is a small talk, but our talk was not small. It was really, really very pleasant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all
Thank you
very
all
much.
so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you
Yeah.
very
See you
much.
tomorrow. See you
Now
tomorrow,
you can
everybody.
shut the whole thing down.
Bye. Thank
You
you.
can-
Bye. Bye, Ahmed.
Bye.
Thank you, Leah.
Bye, Leah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.